Welcome back. As you can see from the table in front of me, we are talking about porcelain today. I've gotten a lot of requests through the comments from videos from people who are asking for more information about Japanese porcelain. Now, Japanese porcelain is a huge subject. There are people who dedicate their lives to studying this. We are not going to be able to do that. We are only going to be able to go through a reasonably quick overview of some of the more common types of 20th century porcelain, the sorts of things that we are going to be seeing as we are out thrifting or hitting antique shops. So stick around. We're getting right into it. Oh, and by the way, when we come back, I'm going to pull you in for a tight close-up. You're probably not going to see anything but my hands and this china, but that's all you need to see. Be right back. As you can see, I have readjusted the camera focus to the center of the table so that we can get close-ups on the items we are discussing today. Now, our topic is Japanese porcelain, and we are dealing with 20th century Japanese porcelain. And the reason for that is this is what we are most likely to find, and Japan having a 12,000 year, give or take, history in pottery and ceramics, we definitely have to sort of bring that in to something manageable. And 20th century. So let's start with a couple of classic Japanese porcelain styles. We're going to start with Imari. Now let me get that upright. Now, Imari porcelain usually has a blue underglaze, and the patterns will be predominantly blue. There are many, many different designs and configurations. This is just one of the many. Now, let me show you this as well. This is a Kutani style, and the glaze is primarily red on Kutani. So, quick, down and dirty, how to tell the difference. Imari, right here, Imari is blue, Kutani, red. Now, again, many, many differences. I'm going to show you this just for the sake of comparison. Rose medallion. We've discussed this. Very standard configuration. We have our center medallion here, which is usually a peony. This is the medallion, and it's surrounded by panels, usually 4, sometimes 6 or 8 on very large pieces. It's a very rigid and well-defined style. So if you look at rose medallion, you recognize it very quickly and easily. Not true with the Imari or Kutani. They were categorized primarily by color. The Imari has an underglazing of blue. The Kutani has an underglazing of red. So ordinarily, that is sort of the down and dirty way to tell them apart. Now, I would refer to these as Kutani style, Imari style, because I don't really know how these individual pieces were glazed and fired. So that's just a quick down and dirty overview. Those are traditional Japanese styles that you see very commonly. These pieces are 20th century. Now, when we look at things like the markings, and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't even know if I'm holding this right side up. I do not read Japanese, so I have no idea what this says. And I would suggest that if you want to go by markings, get yourself a Japanese reader, because deciphering this is like deciphering handwriting. You might be able to get close, you might not. Who knows, really? The most important thing is, what is the general style? What is the general look? So let's move a little forward, because these are traditional pieces, and some of the Imari and Kutani pieces go back centuries. These are 20th century pieces, so this is what we are likely to see. Next up, Nippon. Now, Nippon is simply the Japanese word for Japan. That's all it is. A Nippon piece will have a marking on the back that will ordinarily say hand-painted Nippon. And again, all that means is hand-painted in Japan. Here is another Nippon piece. Notice the heavy gilding. They were very well known for their heavily gilded pieces. Now, another thing when we're dealing with Nippon that I want to point out is this little yellow or cream-colored band that we have here. Now, let me bring this piece back up. Notice this one also, yellow or cream-colored band. I'm going to get you a couple more pieces. We'll get into this in a bit. This was Occupied Japan. Yellow or cream-colored band. This Meito, another later piece, yellow cream-colored band. Makes these pieces very easy to identify. Now, obviously, this is not the only china out there with a yellow or cream band around the edge. But when you see that, flip it over, take a look, see if you have the marking. It's just a very quick, easy way to isolate a potential Nippon candidate. Now, Nippon is collectible, no question about it. There's a strong market for it, and any Nippon pieces, this is a very recent acquisition. It has not even been washed yet. It's fairly good condition. There's some wear to the gilding, no chips, no cracks. That is a good candidate for purchase. This piece, again, fairly recent purchase. This is an excellent piece because there's almost no wear to the gilding, no damage, no chips, no cracks. So it would be a better piece for collection or resale. After Nippon, we get into Noritake. Now, Noritake gets its name from the company that made, there we go. Nope, there we are. Right side up, kind of, sort of. Okay, there, right side up. Noritake was the foremost Japanese porcelain factory in the early 20th century. And there's a particular look to Noritake china. Let me show you another piece. There, Noritake. All right, we're not done yet. Little salt and pepper shakers. Noritake. When you see a Japanese piece like this, a tree on the right side of the piece, water, and in this case there's a little swan there, so sometimes a little house, that's the classic Noritake image. And flip it over, there will be a mark. It will say Noritake. Again, very collectible. This was made by the successor to the Noritake company, and that is Meito. Some of the better Noritake artists got together, formed their own company, Meito, and they began producing some fine china that had a distinct Noritake look to it. This is one of their traditional European china service patterns. A lot of their stuff looks very much like these Noritake pieces, as would be expected, since the same artists that were producing pieces for Noritake were producing pieces for Meito. I recently looked up Antiques Roadshow's take on this, and they are saying that Meito pieces in good condition are starting in value at about $50. Definitely, if you can pick them up at thrift shops, grab them because they are collectible. The next set we get into is this, Occupied Japan. Now, collectors and those who advise collectors have been talking about Occupied Japan ware for a good 20-25 years. They have been advising people to collect, to hang on to these pieces. Occupied Japan refers to a specific period in Japanese history, and that is the 7-year period following World War II, when the United States forces were occupying Japan. An Occupied Japan piece will always say Occupied Japan on the bottom. Here's another very pretty little set. It's just a teacup and saucer, Occupied Japan, in one of their traditional European designs. Just very nice little piece. If someone says to you, I have a piece of Occupied Japan porcelain, but it doesn't say Occupied Japan on it, then guess what? It's not. Because the United States military forces were in Japan, the United States was dictating these markings, and the United States has always been exceptionally picky about international imports. So they made sure Occupied Japan was basically on everything. So if it doesn't say Occupied Japan, it is not. And the reason I give you that caution is I went on Etsy not too long ago and ran a search for Occupied Japan and found all kinds of things that were, frankly, some of it wasn't even Japanese. So be cautious when you buy this. Look for the marking, absolutely. Now, these pieces are not as collectible as some of the small figurines, which were really beautifully made. However, this is part of a set of 8 dessert plates. When you can find a china set, and this is, the condition is perfect. When you find a set, a full set, and in this case it's 8 pieces, you're looking for 6 to 8 pieces. When you do that, yes, that will be collectible. And the reason for that, and does not have a lot to do with Japanese porcelain, but it has to do with china in general. Years ago, standard dinner service was 8 to 12 pieces, either 8 pieces or 12 pieces, generally not 10. Now we no longer give elaborate dinner parties. Mom is working. It's no longer the way we entertain. Families are smaller, so now we're looking more likely at 6 to 8 being the desirable set for service. So that's what you're looking for when you're looking for china. Can you get 6 to 8 good pieces? Now, for heaven's sake, if you can get 12, go for it. But what will sell is 6 to 8 pieces. When we get through the Occupied Japan period, and in fact it was a little less than 7 years, 6.5 years just about. When you get through that, we move into the era in which pieces from Japan were very clearly marked Japan. Usually, as you can see out right here, in a Times Roman script, Japan. We can identify these pretty quickly and easily, even without the markings, because the coloration is really bold. Here's another piece. This is a dessert set. Again, I apologize for the condition. This is a recent acquisition. They haven't even been washed. So, yeah, this one I got yesterday. Very, very bold colors. It's a certain style that just screams Japan. Here's another piece. And this also. Now, these pieces were brought in the 50s and 60s. A lot of them, this in particular, the very mid-century look, although it's not mid-century modern, it's just a very mid-century look. And a big part of it is the bold coloration. Also, this piece, which is not marked, but certainly undoubtedly Japan, is another characteristic of these pieces is the color fades. They did beautiful work with glazes that would wash from blue into pink, or in this case, pink into yellow, with just gorgeous fades. Make these pieces very attractive. And of course, attractive equals desirable, desirable equals saleable. This is another type of Japanware. It's marked hand-painted Japan. This is Lusterware. And Lusterware has an iridescent, pearlized finish, extremely pretty. There are a lot of people who collect nothing but Lusterware. This, again, was a new acquisition, hasn't even been washed yet. The reason I picked this up is it's rather atypical for Lusterware. Lusterware most commonly has this blue, and the band here, which is rather yellowish. Remember, we're looking for those yellow bands when we look for Japanese porcelain. The band is often peach instead of yellow. This is another Lusterware piece. And this piece, the background surface is simply white porcelain, and the Lusterware is in the decorative band around the edges. Lusterware, as I say, people just collect Lusterware alone. That is, it's highly collectible, and there is a certain type of collector out there who just goes for this stuff. Lusterware, whenever I see it, I pick it up. It's beautiful. Right now, it's pretty trendy. So it's hot. It's something to grab if you're looking for resale pieces. Now, this piece of rose medallion, and this is the piece I used to show the rose medallion pattern. You see where I put the little teacup. Well, here it is. It's very pretty. It's a little square teacup. We would call this a demitasse cup, but these pieces, teacups in this size, and you can see the size, they were actually for tea. Asian teacups are much smaller than American teacups. We put our tea in mugs. The British put their tea in what we would call a coffee cup, but these pieces were made, and this is rose medallion, which we know to be a Chinese pattern. We look at this and we say Chinese porcelain. Well, after the Second World War, China became a communist country. We were no longer doing business with them, but we still had a market for rose medallion. The rose medallion industry shifted to Japan. Japan made the porcelain. just the ceramic piece, and then shipped it out to usually Hong Kong, sometimes Macau, and had it painted there. So these pieces, it will not say Japan. Usually they will have, well, actually, that's not true. Sometimes it will say Japan. Usually it will have the initials of the Japanese manufacturer, and it will say decorated or hand-painted in Hong Kong. This is the rose medallion ware that was coming out of Asia from the end of the First World War. I think we dated it 1949, right up to modern times. You can probably get made in Japan, decorated in Hong Kong rose medallion fresh off the assembly line today. Now, this piece is Famille Rose. Now, we discussed this when we were discussing Chinese porcelain. Famille Rose simply means pink family. Now, I know you're looking at this saying, Sue, you're not only blind, you're colorblind. That is not pink. These blue pieces are, in fact, Famille Rose. I do not know why the French made the decision. They are French. I can't explain them. But this is a Chinese-style teacup that was, again, made in Japan, decorated in Hong Kong, just as the rose medallion pieces were. Very pretty little teacup. Rose medallion pieces that come out of Japan and were decorated in Hong Kong or Macau are not quite as valuable as the pieces that came from China. Part of that is because the ones that came from China are simply older and can be documented to be older because of the markings. They will say made in China. When it says made in Japan, we know that it's post 1952, because anything prior to that would have said occupied Japan, as we know. So 1952 and onward, a lot of rose medallion came in this way. The quality is good on some pieces, not so good on others. It's just that general mixed bag you get. Now let's take a look at a few other pieces. This, which is just a really pretty, it's a tiny little vase. There we go. Look at that. And hold it in between my fingers. This is a piece of Japan ware that probably would have come in the 1960s. Very European design, not much of an Asian design. Those also have their own collector's market. This little plate, again, very European design. It's not marked, but it has a sticker. And when we get into the 1960s, we do see this rather a lot. Stickers, rather than printing or even embossing in some cases into the porcelain itself. Still, Japanese porcelain ware, nice. This is just, says hand painted in Japan. Again, European patterns. European patterns have always been part of Japan's export tradition. As early as the beginning of the 20th century, Japanese porcelain with very European designs, roses, flowers, were coming in. They were very hotly sought after. You see that a lot in things like chocolate sets, those tall, elegant sort of coffee pots with the little cups, not much bigger than this. Those were chocolate sets. This is another Japanese piece with applied ware, that has a rather Capodimonte sort of look to it. Again, fairly common, starting in starting in the 1950s, but going through to the 1960s as well. This is a little salt and pepper shaker. I just find these darling. See the label? That's paper. So this is a little removable paper label. A little salt and pepper shaker. Very European design. I mean, these little houses were definitely not the sort of houses you would see in Japan. But it has the Japanese coloring to it. There's another one. It's not part of the same set, but you can see these came from the same source. So those are also collectible. Then you have the import companies. Andrea by Sadek, when you're looking at China, that was one of the better known import companies. At this point, we're looking at 60s to 70s, and they will often say, made in Japan, Andrea by Sadek. Those pieces were made specifically for an American import company. The value is not as high as something that would have been made in Japan to Japanese standards. So when you get that, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy them. I have a couple of large charger plates that are part of my China service in rose medallion patterns that are Andrea by Sadek. I got them because they were pretty, and I'm throwing them in with my China. But would I resell them? Not likely. I probably wouldn't get what I paid for them. This piece, let me turn it on its side because it's going to be hard for you to see it upright. This, by the way, is another Lusterware piece, and I wanted to show you this so you can see the pattern. Mid-century modern. Look at that. That is just screaming, oh my, we are so atomic. The Japanese manufacturers were producing for this market. This is a beautiful piece. I picked it up recently. This is not going into my Etsy shop. I have a friend who collects mid-century modern, and this is going under her Christmas tree because this is just a magnificent piece. I love it to death. And I love the fact that even though it's got a very abstract sort of design on it, you can see that this is a Japanese sailing vessel. This is not Western. Just a great, great piece. What else? When we get into the 80s, a Japanese piece. And we are starting to see marks that look like this. This is not a valuable piece. It is simply a nice Japanese vase. The thing I love about this is the beautiful crazed surface, wonderful crackling, and I would love to be able to get a close-up picture of this, but I know I'm not going to be able to because it's a good demonstration piece for how to tell natural crazing. Natural crazing will vary throughout the piece. Here, across the wider part, a lot of small, tight, close together crazing lines. Up here on the neck, not so many. That's one of the easy ways to tell natural from artificial crazing. Again, this was what was coming in from Japan in the 80s. And you can tell just by looking at the piece. It basically, almost lost that, basically screams 80s. So that pretty much takes care of our quick overview of Japanese porcelain. Now, we covered a lot of ground, but as you can see, a lot came in from Japan. Some of these pieces, by the way, the little Kutani set, we are going to be seeing them again. Jocelyn gave me this stack of china, and by a bizarre little coincidence, it consists of 2 saucers, 2 bread and butter plates, and 4 salad plates. So you know what I'm seeing there? I'm seeing 2 tidbit trays, and each one with an additional serving tray. So we are going to be drilling holes in those. All right. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a project video. So roll up your sleeves. I am going to be putting on my work glasses, and we're going to be having some fun. All right. Catch you then.